she's given me various medication, sleeping tablets. I have to say that generally in taking the medication that I was given made me feel worse, not better.
Not just sleeping tablets?
No, well, the sleeping tablets I felt, Nicky, weren't particularly great for me. I'm not talking about them because I know other people use them in different situations, but I was given different medication, which I presume are some form of antidepressant tablets. There seems to be a stigma in the GP surgery about actually using those words, but that was essentially what I was understood to be given. And I actually felt they made me feel worse, not better.
How long did you take them for?
You're given a course of them, Nicky, and I understand from my knowledge of it that you do generally tend to feel a little bit worse initially before they start to work.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say I've never finished a full course of them because I felt that feeling of making me worse never went away. It never went away.
Stephen?
Yes, I think very often they say that the tablets do make you feel worse before they make you feel, if they're going to make you feel better. I'm really concerned that you're not talking to your parents, because I'm sure they would want to help you. They would want to know. They will be like I was.
Sometimes it's easier talking to a stranger, though, isn't it?
Something happened to you. And they would want to be part of trying to, help you get right.
I genuinely understand that. And I have to say, if it wasn't for the thought of them, or if I wasn't aware of the, I always try to think of, for example, Gary Speed's case was very prominent.
Think of your parents. Think what it would do to them.
Yeah.
Always think that.
And I've seen it. And I always think to myself at the moment, I only use Gary Speed as an example because I know it's a very prominent case, but I always wonder if he could have seen the devastation that he caused, would he have done it in the first place?
That's right.
And that's probably the one forefront thought that I have that probably has stopped me to this point. Yeah. But what I would like to say though, Nicky, is, and I genuinely hope that other people who feel the same might consider this thought also, because I now feel as though, I think to any normal person, the thought of killing themselves, the thought of suicide would be horrific, something they could never even consider without a chill to the spine. But I now feel like that's something that passed through my head so often now that it's almost a normal thought process. I don't consider myself to have a fear of that, the way that any normal person would have a fear of doing that. And then my worry for myself at the moment would be that is now almost blending into a thought process for that's on. That seems acceptable. If you know what I mean. To me, there's no great shock in that. Whereas to yourself, there may well be. That must be the most horrible thought you might ever have.
Listen, can I give your number off the air to Stephen, so maybe you can have a further conversation?
Of course.
Stephen, is that okay?
Helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe after 10 o'clock, have a conversation between yourselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Nicky, it was I just wanted to give I thought would be a useful overview to.
Well, you have been incredibly, and apart from the fact I've been heartrending, and I feel for you, and what you say about thinking about your parents is incredibly moving. But I would say to you as well that what you said is universal in people who have depression, and you will have touched so many people with what you've said this morning, and you've said so many things that people will be able to relate to, and also you've said things to which people will not have understood, but maybe now understand a little bit more.
Yeah, well, that was my hope.
I thank you so much for calling us.
You're very welcome.
And you'll be Stephen and yourself. You can have a chat later on.
Yes, that was quite great.
Cheers. Thank you.
It's 9:23. More of your thoughts on this, but I think it's worth as well pointing out the Welsh national team's GP, Dr. Mark Ridgewell, has told the inquest into Gary Speed, who is, what they call in the news the peg for this, that story. He showed no sign of stress and depression. We don't know if what happened to Gary Speed had any link to depression. The coroner at the inquest also said he cannot be satisfied he intended to kill himself. Lots of questions unanswered there. But he did. And we're asking this morning, how do you know when someone is close to the brink? It's 9:24. Here's Orna. Well, Stephen Hapgood, what bravery from that caller. Steve, lots of texts, Stephen, as well. I've just listened to Steve. I've suffered like him from depression for the last 7 years. I got to a stage, I was driving down a motorway, no seatbelt at 100 miles per hour, looking for a bridge to drive into. The thought of my kids stopped me. The stress of my job at the time aggravated my condition and affected my self-esteem. Now I have a job I love, but the depression is still with me. Thoughts of suicide never far away. I'm being treated, but when it gets bad, I retreat into my head. and can't physically talk to my wife. Another one, give Steve a medal for his bravery. Keep fighting, mate. That comes from Paul. And let's speak to Vic. Alexis is a counsellor, actually. Alexis Elliott, suicide prevention counsellor. Good morning, Alexis.
Good morning.
And Vic is in Cheshire. Hello, Vic.
Oh, good morning to you.
And Nicky in Gloucester. Nicky in Gloucester. Hello, Nicky in Gloucester.
Hello.
What would you like to say, Nicky?
I'd just like to say that often when we're looking at these things quickly in the glare of the media and everything, we're looking for a quick answer. And I think that's the problem. I don't think there is a quick answer, and I don't think there's one answer for everybody. And I think the best thing we could do is, I've suffered from depression and I've been suicidal, but I only once tried to take my life, and thankfully I got the help I needed, and it just showed me that I couldn't do it on my own. I still want to do it on my own sometimes, but it's just the process I've been through over the last 15, 20 years, I've still been despairing and I still get frustrated, but I just know that if I can keep myself going in the immediate feelings that I have, just keep my courage for that amount of time, that I will find some kind of answer, even if it only takes me for the next week. So I have been suicidal. I was taken into a mental hospital, and I can describe what it was like before I went in and what I made of it then. I just wish people knew that there was help before they needed it. And I don't just mean sufferers, I mean families, you know. In the old days, people were scared of epilepsy because they didn't understand it. And when I was at school as a teenager, I'm now in my mid-40s, we were actually taught what to do if we saw someone have a fit. And I think it's going to have to be a bit like that with emotional mental health, that somehow as a society we're going to have to learn how to do first aid until the specialists get there. It's just that because you can't see it, like physical symptoms, people are more scared and they don't really want to face it.
Is it something in your life, or is it something in your biochemistry, do you think?
Well, I for myself, I think I was not able to grow as a child and as a teenager in a way that suited me, and I have a lot of energy and a lot of determination. So I think all of that energy's kind of stayed inside. It was only when I had a child myself that things started to change, and I decided I needed to be more assertive, more out there, because you have to look after your child, so you don't want to be a mouse. I think a lot of women find this particularly. They start standing up for themselves more when they have a child, and then it's a case of finding out how to do it with the minimum disruption to normal life, you know.
What was the help?
Well, the best help I had was that I just completely couldn't manage on my own anymore. I had two babies quite close together, my second and third children 11 months apart. I just moved house and my husband's job went up the spout as well, so it was quite a lot of pressure. And half the time I was able to behave like a completely responsible mum. I was able to use all my skills of keeping them safe, and half the rest of the time I was trying to find out how to leave the situation with the minimum fuss. And I bought a ticket down to Devon because I wanted to go out on the moors and just lie there until it didn't hurt anymore.
Till it didn't hurt anymore.
That's the thing. And the thing I went into psychiatric hospital, and I found that far from being a horrible place, it was actually a place that gave me the space I needed. And the psychiatric nurses were the best help for me, because their approach was most of them didn't wear uniforms, and they would be with us as we did our daily occupational therapy, craft and meals and that kind of thing, and relate to us like people. And I would say the combination of them treating me like an ordinary person, not a mad person, and their specialist medical help and the backup they'd got, I think it's a combination that is important. Because if someone treats you like a patient, what's to make you feel normal again? What's to help you find your normal? And if people try to help on a layman's terms without any medical backup, they might miss the fact that through being down for a long time, my body had got low on chemicals it needed to manage on its own. For me, it started with the emotions going down, lowering my mood, and then my body had learnt to sort of almost work on a very low level. And it wasn't enough for daily life. You know, you come and you'd need to respond to something, and you couldn't because you're used to being low. And you don't want to ask for help.
Oh, you're right.
What's worth pointing out is that both you and Steve, from whom we heard earlier, are tremendously intelligent and articulate people.
Oh, I've got 10 O-levels, 3 A-levels, and I've done 2 years at university as well.
But your heart goes out to those who maybe are not so articulate and not so able to, are not so capable of self-analysis as well.
Well, I think I'm not going to get religious here, but I see it as a gift. I do have faith in God, and that didn't stop me feeling suicidal, so that's an interesting journey on its own, because you can bring all sorts of religious ideas, and you should be okay like this, and you should be able to pray, and you should be able to go to help with the church. But I do actually feel that being able to talk about it is a gift, and I would really like to encourage Steve, the fact that he knows what it's like to feel so poorly. It shouldn't be a barrier to him helping other people, because
I'm sure it will. Judging from
helps to talk to someone who's not going to say, "Don't be stupid."
Judging from the text, he's helped an enormous amount of people, and likewise, you're doing just that too. Alexis, just quickly, and we will come back on this after the news, of course. But listening to Nicky, Nicky made a very important point, Alexis, at the outset. And you're a suicide prevention counsellor. This is incredibly complex, and every case is different.
Yeah, definitely. And I think really what people need to understand is that talking can help. And I think it's about finding the right person to talk to, and whether that's someone that you know or whether it's someone that's a professional, then it's kind of coming to terms of kind of what you're going through and being able to make sense of those.
It can take a long time on the NHS though, can't it, to see the right person?
It can do, and it's like, I think what it is that is the first protocol where lots of people go to their GP and can get referred through, the counselling service that way. But there are organisations out there that offer counselling, and it doesn't have to cost. There are voluntary organisations as well that you can get there a lot quicker than you can do on the NHS, perhaps.
We shall return very shortly. It's 9:32. Thank you for now, and thank you so much, Nicky, for that. Let me just remind you about the action line. I think it's important to do that throughout the programme. If any of the issues we're discussing affect you, bbc.co.uk/action line, and there, on that wonderful resource, you will find contact details for a range of charities. The suicide prevention charity Papyrus, represented this morning on your call by Stephen Hapgood, can be contacted on 0800 068 4141. Here's Simon with the weather. So many extraordinary texts and calls this morning. How do you know when someone's on the brink? Alexis is still with us, the counsellor. We're going to speak to Dr. Ian Banks as well. Ian is president of the Men's Health Forum, spokesperson for the BMA on men's mental health. Ian, good morning. Dr. Banks, hello.
Good morning.
Morning. And Jo has sent us a text. We've phoned her back. Hello, Jo.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on. Again, tell us your story. What happened to your daughter?
It's quite a long story, but ultimately she committed suicide by hanging herself in October 2008. She had actually talked about it quite a bit prior to that and made a number of attempts. Obviously, me and her friends and all of her family had endeavoured to get her whatever help we could, but unfortunately we weren't able to stop what was, in retrospect, perhaps inevitable.
Inevitable. And did she have children herself?
Yes, she had 2 children, Isaac and Ruby, and Ruby was only 6 months old at the time. Isaac was a little bit older, he just turned 4.
Right. What was this something that she was suffering from an early age, from early on? Could you see it developing in her?
I believe so. I believe that when she was younger, that her behaviour at school didn't seem quite right somehow, that it seemed a little extreme. Okay, and the teachers were saying, oh, she's just been naughty, she needs to do this, you need that, and sort of like the emphasis was on me being a better parent, perhaps, or I don't know. And I kept going back to the doctor and trying to get some help from some mental health professionals, and they were sort of a little bit dismissive. And when eventually her behaviour had become so extreme, it's very hard for her to even be in a school environment. She felt distressed, she'd leave, that eventually they took me seriously, but she was 11 and she just wasn't willing to accept the help. it was almost too late, because she'd become she'd got, a bit of a teenage attitude in a way, I suppose, mixed in with perhaps some of the problems she was experiencing. And it just made it almost impossible to sort of even get it. I mean, I remember once just trying to drag her into it was silly for me to try to do that, but I just remember trying to drag her into somewhere just to try and see a counsellor, and of course it wasn't really going to work, and I just couldn't make it happen, if you know what I mean. I couldn't make her